Good evening and welcome to the December 17th meeting of the Barrington Planning Board. First order of business is roll call of members, starting with Mr. Shepherd.
Not present.
Jesse, you're present.
Alan present. Fiscal year. Town planner Vanessa Price, James Dennison, our zoning administrator, and Connor McIver, town administrator. Review and approval of the minutes from December 3rd, 2020. Questions, comments?
I have one change.
Okay.
Line 524.
Now it expressed that it was the plan.
I said it was a better residential plan. It's definitely not a better mixed-use plan, mixed-use development plan, better residential plan.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Is there a motion to read or some?
Make a motion, we accept the meeting minutes as amended.
I second.
Okay, Bob seconded it.
I'm going to abstain. I didn't read them.
Jesse, your eye.
Aye.
Let's go on. Okay, next zoning amendments. So we're going to start with Article 12, which is the Barrington Master Plan implementation from our consultants. And I've got some notes I'd kind of like to go through. And if anybody has one to add, we'll do on this, add that to the second pass, if that's okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may address the board.
Go ahead, sure, absolutely.
As you'll notice, and there were some questions recently about the four-step process. I have given you a document today that went over with the consultant. That's it starts on page 22. That is the language that they're looking to possibly do for Barrington. It hasn't, the final will not done because that'll be done through our regulations portion, but I know that you guys were asking what it was.
Okay.
I know that several members asked if Connor could be here tonight, so I did actually on my own. Yes. But yeah, as you know, the consultant said that Barrington is doing very well with their conservation subdivisions. And that they had heard from the group, and I'm probably just reiterating what he already knows, but that during the subcommittee meeting was also discussed how you want to strengthen the design more of the neighborhoods, and that's what the four-step process is for more. If we want to look at exploring our regulations at a later time, or when the regulations are updated, do a requirement for a preliminary design and then formal, we discuss that then. Whereas like now we don't require a design, even though best practice, but it's not required. Conventional or conservation subdivision. They're not required to do a design, but they've always.
The proposal is to make it required, though,
Correct.
just for conservation.
Just
Do-
for conservation,
You're
but
saying
we can
to
make
do
it up
the
to
yield
them.
plan. To do design based on the yield plan.
Mhm.
That's not going to say. And bill plan, we think should be step one.
Can you make sure your microphone?
And recently we've really tried hard to strengthen those. So the fact it's not in there specifically, I would like to see it as a.
Well, that yield plan language that's in the ordinance and regulations right now, that's not going anywhere. In addition to the ads that the town meeting approved even just this past March, if there are stronger yield plan requirements that the board wants to see, I mean, that can happen concurrently. That this isn't in place of yield plan requirements, right? So that part of the process is required just as it is now. This part of the process, essentially happens after that, but that this part of the process really focuses on once you know how you're situate or how many lots you're situating, how are you situating them? right? How are you taking a piece of land? And Hanover had a good quote in their explanation of the four-step design process. And I feel like this is what happens in Barrington. They say specifically that it's not an exercise in geometry, which that's what it is, right? So developers and their engineers come in and it's simply an exercise in geometry. They're drawing the lots to maximize and, optimize the efficiency of subdivision plan. And I think this board and the community has been concerned that there hasn't been enough consideration for the natural features and, spacing of the development of the houses and things like that. And so that's where this process comes in. It doesn't skip the yield plan, part of the determination of how many lots a conservation subdivision is eligible for. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't see that.
So to expand on that, Ron, I want to add that the problem we're trying to fix is an optics one, right? Don't like the way they look. So they're trying to put the looks in front, so you get a subdivision that you like the way it looks because the yield plan is what it is.
No, the yield plan isn't what it is. The yield plan, you should show it to us, we should approve of the yield plan, and that starts the process with the counter.
But you're gonna do.
Let me finish. That starts how many units you can put in.
No, but that's what we're saying. The problem that we're trying to solve is the looks of the subdivision. So the yield plan, once you approve it, is the number of lots. 5, 20, 17, whatever the yield plan is, you're going to approve. But it's the looks. If you have them come in with the yield plan and the conservation thing, the looks always get bumped to the back. So they're trying to front end the look because the yield plan is what you decide. That's what Connor was trying to say. So if you get something that looks good to you, then you decide the yield plan is 12. They get to situate 12 houses in that look that you've already said, we like this look the best.
Yeah,
Doesn't
but
that make
if
sense?
If you look, it's 12 properties versus 18 properties. The look is totally different. And, the effect is totally different. So to me, you got to start with the number of units you're going to place is where you start. And we've had this problem before where they come in with a plan. We try to bring them back to the yield plan. They don't want to do that because they've already done their design for the conservation subdivision. You can't get them to go back.
Are you happy the way that our yield plan regulations are now?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, we know we're going to, probably if your thing passes, it'll dramatically reduce the numbers. Goes up to 130,000. Fitting that into our current system, is that good? I mean, instead of 58 out here, they can only do 36, for example. And even on Young Road, they can only do 14 instead of 22. It's like that.
I think what it does is it actually makes it so that when somebody is doing a layout and a lot plan, you will have a much better looking lot plan. Because, and I can use, for example, because they're approved and done, when they're putting in lots, and we have been fighting back on this, that they're sticking these lots in a conservation subdivision with no access to the conservation area off the lot. They're creating funky shaped lots that are triangulated. They don't meet our zoning requirements. This will lessen that burden on them. They'll actually be able to put a yield plan that makes the lots really conform and comply.
Yeah.
Where we're getting lots that are crammed in here that really are non-conforming lots. And that's only been more of an issue because we're pushing back on that with geometry and the layout, and they're cutting lot, maybe they end up taking one lot out or two lots out.
For example, we mentioned that you couldn't, you would need a 9.6 if you were to do that, so they ended up moving the road. And other ones we've been able to push back on too, so I think we're able to do that. If you remember the big 180 lot that somebody proposed up on in Back Road, they just took these rectangles and dropped it on a topographic map and says, well, that's all you have to do. We didn't have all the bridges that would be required. They'd have to go to the DOT regulations. I mean, we're really tough on this stuff.
Yeah, but remember when we tried to get them to talk of the yield plan, that they were very annoyed that we wanted to talk about yield plan. They wanted to talk about the conservation subdivision. Every time we try to bring them back to the yield plan.
Well,
Yeah,
they got to start with the yield plan.
Well, that's my point.
But yeah,
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you don't have to be sorry. your meeting, I don't mind waiting my turn, but, Ron, if you look on page 4 of their document, it's farther down, the pages of what Vanessa provided aren't numbered, but you get to the Article 12 part, and you go to page 4, their page 4. 6.3.2, parentheses 2, let me know when you're there.
Yeah,
What are we looking at?
You gave them, Vanessa, a
Right here.
packet.
maximum building size.
The packet you got last, yeah,
So,
the packet you got
go
last
towards the
week.
back, where it starts with the
Oh,
consultant.
he has a new one. You don't have this one from the
okay.
consultant?
Here.
I can share mine
I don't know.
on the screen.
I don't think I have that one either.
Can you show me the front?
Oh, yeah, that's what I have.
Oh,
Yeah, that's this one.
It's
Oh,
just
that
in
one?
the-
Okay.
It's in the back, we're going to 12 first instead of, that's the last
okay.
zoning article.
yeah, it starts with Barrington Master Plan Implementation, version 3, from December 12th.
You have that?
Trying to
find
figure out.
It's in the back of the thick packet. Scott, are you looking still? Yeah. Nope, that's your subdivision.
Guide me.
This?
You're almost right.
Yes.
Right here, you're right there.
I just got there.
Yeah, see, you
You
didn't
said
need me.
12, Article
One more
12.
page. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
it is-
6.3.
Well, you gotta go over
Thank you.
here.
Well, Article of
12,
the
12 on the, it's a zoning article 12.
All right. It's a
Item-
zoning article 12, okay.
But Article
so that's the beginning of the
6.3.2
packet.
Yeah.
parents too.
Of
This is
the
what he's talking about.
zoning,
Page
Yep.
4.
that's true.
Yep.
Wait for Scott to get there. All right, is everybody there?
On page
Okay,
4.
look at 6322.
So 6.3.2 parentheses 2, this is the yield plan requirements as they exist now. And they're unchanged, right? The whatever, the purpose of this amendment isn't related to the yield plan specifically. That doesn't mean this board can't consider other changes to the yield plan separately. But if you go now to the next page, the top of page 5, what they're doing is they're taking out the part of the regulations now which require a conceptual development plan and a site inventory. So they're taking those and they're replacing that process with a more robust 4-step design process. And so you're still doing the yield plan first. You're still addressing the yield plan first. Those regulations are still there, including, what was it that was added last time? Financial viability.
Oh, yeah, all
Of the
that
yield
old
plan.
stuff is still in there.
And
We're not taking anything out of our regulations. This is like adding to it.
I just would do a couple of step one, it referenced the number of units in the yield plan or something like that. So we know we're dealing with, to me, a first design with the first step
that's an
is,
easy
share my plan.
fix.
We haven't got the units defined yet. I think, to me, that's the first step. You figure out how many units you're gonna place and you place them.
Well, I think the challenge that we run into is they come in with a conceptual plan, but as we've all seen, it doesn't account for steep slopes, very steep slopes. They don't account for all the wetlands and the bogs and the ponds or the areas that otherwise may not be, would affect where you place a lot or how you place a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't make any effort to show that it meets road standards or any of that stuff.
Right.
So a proposal, 6.3.2 parentheses 3, in that opening sentence where it says a conservation subdivision design shall then be submitted and must follow the 4-step design process. I mean, I think where it says shall then be submitted, I think that refers back to the fact that the yield plan has already happened, but let's say that specifically. Let's say following a determination by the planning board regarding the yield plan, a conservation subdivision design shall be submitted and must follow the 4-step design process. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, when you get a 4-step process, the first step skips yield plan. I think that's a problem. If you do the yield
Well,
plan.
they're in order, but it doesn't matter. Adding some redundancy to make it abundantly clear, I don't think hurts anything.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is you get, I'll use the term, a slick talking engineer who comes in and makes a presentation and twists the language to what they really want it to be, as opposed to what it actually is.
So I guess structurally, you'll have to make a determination. I mean, I don't think that what's proposed now isn't that you have one meeting with an applicant and determine the yield plan at that meeting, and then they come back in the future to start the next phase of the process. That isn't how it's designed now. That isn't how it's proposed to be designed. Is that what you're wanting to see, Ron?
I definitely want to start with the yield plan,
Okay.
and
But it can be at the same meeting.
it can be, but.
Okay.
You know, I think the problem is if they put engineering in, once they, in their mind, they have 18 units in mind,
Mhm.
it's hard to get them to move off that.
And this is, in my opinion, this is the brilliance of the four-step design process, because they're coming in, and two things are happening. The first thing that's happening is the design review, the structural design review, which is in our regulations now, is optional, but the structural process where they are having a design review meeting with the planning board that it isn't a formal application, you're not accepting it as complete, this is a design review, that's required.
It is gonna be required.
So that step has to happen where you're talking about the yield plan. And then the beauty of the four-step design process is step 4 is drawing the lot lines of the conservation subdivision. So, in your mind, you're saying step 1 should be yield plan. In practice, step 1 is yield plan. Step 1 starts after the yield plan. But just before step 1, let's just reference following a determination about the
I mean,
yield plan.
I feel pretty strongly about that because I think once they start doing engineering towards their conservation subdivision,
Mm-hmm.
they become very rigid.
Mhm.
And I think if I was a developer, I want to know how many units I'm going to be allowed before I really dive into the process.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, would I like one meeting with just the yield plan? Yes, I would. I mean, in my ideal world, I'd like to come in and show me a yield plan, show you a conservation subdivision plan, conventional. We will prove that, and then you can go back and do your other design.
Yeah.
But start with the yield plan. Show me your conventional. And we'll look at it for road elevations, everything,
Yep.
and confirm that's the number. And then you can go do your planning with confidence that that's the number of units that we're likely to approve.
Vanessa, correct me if I'm wrong, but the planning board can't approve the yield plan at a design review, right?
No,
No.
be at the formal application stage. Cop direction.
Oh, do you?
What?
This
His
guy.
might be
does.
better. I don't
John
know.
brings
No
coffee.
offense.
Got a whole bag of Ludens here.
No offense.
Oh, look at, they got a whole board of them here.
Everybody's people get, my voice turned.
People with these children, little petri dishes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, can we get back to, some order here?
So,
Oh.
Yes,
oh,
please, thank you, John.
6.3.23.
Good reprimand.
Let's start with page 3. Item 621 increases the general residential to 30 acres. I propose we also look at 622 and adjust the common open space for the general residential from 50% to 60%. So it matches the neighborhood residential because now they're both 30 acres. Does this make sense?
Where are you?
Right here on 621, page 3.
Oh, back, the very back.
Yeah.
Right here. Okay, so where we were. Yeah. Well, you said you can start at the beginning, so I was kind of.
Oh,
Confused me.
well, we're not doing this until later, all that stuff. That's our stuff.
This is first stuff.
Sticking
I
with
get
the
it, I get it.
consultants, so
I'm
we
on
won't
board. I
hold a
got
comment.
it.
Okay, so I'm proposing that we look at 622, which is not here, and adjust it for the common open space to match the neighborhood residential, 60%. That makes sense. They're both the same. Somebody shaking their head, does it make sense?
Oh,
Oh, you're doing
no,
something.
I don't, I gotta look at the reference.
Oh, okay. 622. Common open space in your subdivision regulations. Common open space, at the bottom of page 23 in your regulations.
Are you talking about zoning?
Subdivision or zoning?
Zoning. Oh, did I say
Oh,
subdivision? Oh, I'm sorry, zoning.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not,
Senior moment.
senior moment, exactly. It's because I have a whole other page here of changes to our subdivision regulations later, after April.
So it says 50% in the GR and 60%.
Page
Right.
In our, and you're saying.
Yeah, so they're now both gonna be 30 acres, just like the GR is gonna be like the NR. So we should make that also 60%. Does that make sense? Sure. Okay. Everybody agrees? Everybody agreed, 60%.
Formal vote?
No, we don't need a vote. This is,
If it's there, if it's a consensus.
yeah, consensus. Okay, next one is 6231, parentheses Cs. This is on the consultant's page 3. 623, parentheses 1, parentheses C. See, I'm losing my voice already. I don't know why we're reducing these to 1,000 square feet.
That's not theirs, that's ours.
That's it.
The only proposed change
Wait
is
a
the,
minute, 621C, just,
6213, parentheses 1?
623, parentheses 1, sub parentheses C.
That's ours.
Currently, I'm looking at the zoning manual.
Yeah. Let me tell
As
you-
land without lots for either detached or unattached dwellings, it is
Well,
held
it's
in
ours.
common.
I think it was yours, John. You wanted to leave open the possibility of,
1,000 feet?
we wanted to leave like the thing in Dover, you mentioned the thing in Dover, that cottage thing.
Oh, yeah, but I said that was stupid. Nobody would go for that here.
I put it in because you say, you're the one that's want us to do it.
Where did you put it in? It's not in our current regulations. I'm
No,
looking at it
we were
now.
taking out for the lots without,
Oh.
for
Okay,
detached buildings. And then we said, I think actually you said too, Bob, right? You said the thing in Dover was great. Let's be able to allow that, these little small places that are under 1,000 square feet.
Bob
yeah,
never
like
would've said that.
450 square feet. Well, I must have
It wasn't
been-
my idea, I put it in because you guys said it. Well, take it out, I put it in. You can take it out, I have no problem with it.
Who wants to take it out and put regular houses in here? These are regular
Yeah.
detached
Yeah,
houses.
I mean, yes.
What do you think?
The comment was made, let me remind you, the comment was made, that little thing in Dover.
I know who they
was
are, yeah.
great. Everybody loved it.
I don't love it.
Oh,
You
no,
must have been
loved it.
somebody else loved it.
Okay, somebody loved it.
I love it.
I think you're making it up.
I'm not a voting
Anyway,
member.
First of all, they're rentals. They're all rentals. Nobody's gonna
Take a vote, I'm okay taking it out.
All right,
I'm good taking it out.
all right. So we're taking that out.
I
Oh,
So now we know where
I
it
said I
came from.
personally like
see,
the idea.
that's where it
of
came
having
from.
Little detached dwelling units. I don't think I was hot in the paint on it
No,
in
but
any
you-
way, shape, or fashion.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you want to take out the land without lots?
For
It just
For
seemed
detached-
contrary to try to do tiny homes on.
detached
Well,
units.
if you were gonna do
For
tiny
detached.
homes, I'm okay with the land without lots.
For attached units, but not for detached units. We're okay doing land without lots for attached units.
Right, but if you do tiny homes, you'd want them on their own individual lots. No one's gonna build 1,000 square foot tiny home with no future potential on a full-size conservation subdivision lot when they can build a full-size
Well, first of
home.
all, realtors cannot sell something, I don't believe, if you don't have personal space. To put a picnic table, a grill behind your house.
But you can do
maybe
that
a
on
shed.
condos. I just don't
Well,
understand
with
the
the
problem that
permission
you're
of the
solving.
condo association, you can't just do it willy-nilly. You can't even change your mailbox in most of these places, and they all have to match this. So, but anyway.
Let's take out the 1,000 square feet.
Currently, it says a land without lots for either detached or attached dwellings that is held in common interest by all homeowners residing in the subdivision. That's what it says now,
We want to change it to detached units only.
Right.
What
okay?
it says right now.
No, he wants to get rid
Oh,
of
it
It says
detached.
either.
You can't do it for detached units. You can only do
Is
it
there
for-
a why behind that?
Is there a why? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have an individual attached house,
Mhm.
right there, why aren't you doing lot lines? The reason you're not doing lot lines is because you can get around the 20,000 square feet or the 30,000 square feet.
yearling.
Still have the same density in yield plan. You're just putting them close together on land with lots, so it's
Don't
a
want close
condo.
together. They don't
It's like a
They're all gonna
condo.
be little circles off of the subdivision road. That's the whole plan here.
This goes back to that earlier conversation. The reason you do it that way is because you can't make the individual lots meet the lot shape and size, the geometric dimensioning that our policies dictate. So you get around that by making it a PUD.
Well,
right?
the whole thing is this is innovative land use. It's intended to get around those constrictions to have,
South on 202. This is yearling, or no, it's yearling, right? Yeah, Yearling Drive. It's a condo.
Right.
It's the detached units.
If they're detached, yes, we want them to meet the requirement of 20,000 square feet.
Is that the little circle off
Yep.
of Route 9?
Or 30,000, whatever it is.
So if you say you don't want to allow detached, you don't want to allow this, which is perfectly fine.
We don't want that.
In practice, as a concrete example of something we have in the community.
That's a great use of land and
Well-
it's the same density.
That's your opinion. Opinions can be different on that. I mean,
If in fact you can do a conservation subdivision with 20,000 square foot lots now,
30,000 now.
well, 20 now, but 30 coming maybe. With this concept, you can put them closer together still. We don't want, so it gets around the minimum lot requirement. So we don't want them to get around. We want to eliminate this loophole to get around the minimum lot size for detached properties.
is that what the board feels like?
Okay, what's the wording you want?
So
Just
take
take
out
out-
1,000 square feet. and we're good.
Oh, just take out the 1,000 square feet?
This is modified already.
Tiny
What we
homes
wanted
on
to
it.
do.
Okay,
We all agreed on this, very much. We all agreed on this.
okay.
Can you
Were you
make
trying to
an
say I was in
The
favor of this?
implication is you
You
push
brought it up,
up,
it
you
would have
push
said,
townhouse
so you
style.
brought the 1,000 square feet.
No, this
You
this
know.
guy over here apparently.
Yeah.
So you can
Makes
still do
sense.
townhouse style.
Yeah.
Which is arguably, in my opinion, I'll say, a worse look than single detached units on a condo thing.
Yeah,
So
but
you're
attached-
encouraging them to do a less attractive design.
No, a lot line, with no lot lines for attached housing makes much more sense. You know what I mean?
No, I think you're forcing them into a design parameter that forces them to do townhouses, let's say like another one behind Irving. So you're forcing that, encouraging that rather, as opposed to doing single homes with no lot lines in a condo for like a retirement community, and they don't want to maintain it, so they do a condo association where everything's maintained and you've got your little dwelling unit.
You can have a condo association in
To be clear, you could
course.
still do a development like that, not using the conservation subdivision provisions. This is just a conservation subdivision provisions. A good example of that would have been what the 6-unit proposal across the street from the cemetery, right? So that's no lot lines. That's single unit detached, even though it's kind of 1.5 because it's mixed use. But you can still design a detached development, but you just can't utilize the provisions of conservation subdivision. You have to use site plan, right?
I was looking through the regulation. I'm really curious about 631 parentheses 1, where you can have 6 units in a conservation subdivision in a single structure. No, but that's,
In the proposal.
now it's back to
but
5.
but that's not conservation subdivision.
I can explain why it's back to 5 later, but
That's not conservation subdivision.
no, that's, yeah.
Right, but in conservation, I thought we went to
Which is gonna go.
Oh, I see what you're saying, the 4.
no more than
Groupings.
4 per, yeah,
Groupings.
cluster of no more than 4 built units per building.
Didn't the lawyer push back?
Yeah, but, go ahead.
I think there's 2 things being talked about, and I don't know what, I think the part of what the consultants proposed is groupings of no more than 4 detached housing units
Right.
along a road with open space in between. What John's talking about is a multifamily building of 6 units.
In a conservation
Attached.
subdivision according to our current regulations. Well, we did talk about it in our item number 3.
Let's stay it.
Okay,
But yeah.
all right, let's stay where I was going here.
Conservation subdivision.
Okay, 1,000 feet of route. We're just staying with what we want. Let's go to page 4, 632, parentheses 2.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
if
go
I
ahead.
may, back at the 6231C,
Yeah,
we're keeping the original language.
just keeping that language.
We're crossing out the
Oh, you're crossing out,
Detached.
detached.
detached of less than
Correct.
1,000 square feet.
I'm talking about, if you look at the original, in our zoning right now, we're just taking out
detached.
detached. Thank you. I just want to make sure I was on the
So
same
you're
page.
taking out the
Thank you.
words for either.
For either detached or
Yeah,
is the only thing
It's
we're
just gonna
taking
be
out.
attached dwellings.
Correct, thank you.
Okay. Then we go to 6, go ahead.
How's it gonna read?
So.
As land without lots for,
As land without lots for attached dwellings that is held in common interest by all homeowners residing in the subdivision.
thank you.
Okay, next we have 632, parentheses 2C, on page 4. Let me get page 4 again. I would like to add on C where it says, it lists wetlands, buffers, 4K areas, test pits. I'd like to add steep slopes and very steep slopes. It's just something to look at because we're concerned about, and these are gonna be new definitions in our regulations if that passes, which is in our,
Tuesday 6.3.
Have it up on the screen if that's easier. I don't know that it is, but.
2, parentheses 2. C. On page 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. C is proposed conceptual lot shall clearly show the location, wetlands, buffers, 4K areas, test pits, setbacks, and any other information, and somewhere in there we'll add steep slopes and very steep slopes. How's that sound?
Yep.
Okay,
And before you leave that,
go ahead.
somewhere I could throw in, must demonstrate that they can meet road standards. And what happened to the reasonable and feasible language? That seems to be gone.
I've got it in my notes here. I'd like to add that in.
Yeah, so I think that,
The court decision was feasible and realistic.
Mimic, do you want to mimic the definition of the current subdivision regulations you just passed that define the yield plan?
yeah, well, here's the yield, this is the yield plan.
Yeah, but I'm
This is
just
the thing,
saying
it
put that in there.
must demonstrate. Alex said demonstrate compliance with road standards.
Yep.
Because,
Yeah, I
they
agree.
just slap these roads in anywhere and on steep slopes and all kinds of stuff. And,
Yep.
Is that gonna be a new bullet point?
Yes.
Like under conceptual lots shall adhere to all frontage requirements?
And you could throw it in there. You could throw it in D and say,
But at the end,
and meet all road standards. And demonstrate compliance with road standards.
yeah, probably the last
G-
one should stay last, probably,
Yeah, last one.
because that's like a catch-all.
And reasonable and feasible, where you wanna put that, John? That's gotta be in there somewhere.
You could do number F.
Would you add it to
You could do it
E?
in F, yeah.
Add
It could
it.
be the viability and reasonableness or something like that, the viability and.
Sure.
Yeah, the reasonableness and.
Feasible
viability.
and realistic was the court, I think
Was
it
it?
was out of Amherst,
Say that again, John?
talking about feasible and realistic.
Okay, so throw that in the, want to replace viability with that?
Yeah, I don't know how the board feels. Makes sense?
That's good, yeah.
Okay, we could do that. So just to reiterate, we're putting that in F or in?
Yep.
Okay, so we're not adding a G for anything? Just gonna add those to.
No,
the
and we're gonna add
Good.
the road standards to D,
And,
and
okay.
I'm just gonna modify it.
Yes,
that
and then, and then add
Is
the
that okay
additional
for you?
language for
You got
F.
that? Okay for you? Okay. All right, so that one's done, steep slopes and all that. Then we've discussed the 5-step process, that's on page 5 and 6. I don't know if you guys have more to discuss.
You can't add a step.
I was like, I thought it was a 4-step process.
It is, Ron just put a step in
I
front.
added another
He added a
step.
for Ron.
Step 1/2 is yield
Oh, yeah,
plan.
yield plan.
Yeah, 1B.
Let me call LeBron. You know how the master of lighting,
Yeah,
now the master/master of
yield plans.
Which is good, because that's what we want.
Well, let's finalize the language in
Hang on, Are we
6.3.
being recorded? I can't use the language. Then. Never mind.
Bringing the light to the yield plan.
You got it. I like that.
Spotlight. Yield plan.
You got AI going there,
Get some
feeding you
t-shirts.
lines.
Get some t-shirts for you.
Okay, let's finalize in 6.3.2 parentheses 3 though. Let's finalize the language that makes it clear that the yield plan determination comes first. Following a review and determination of the yield plan pursuant to 6.3.22, a conservation subdivision design shall be submitted. Okay,
Okay, like that.
okay.
Okay, looks good. 2 very steep slopes.
And then we'll take out then.
Okay,
Changing it from follow, yeah, so follow. Okay.
Now,
you got it?
To confirm, Connor, we're not gonna allow all conservation subdivision plans going forward must be groups? Is that what I'm seeing in here?
So there are two components, and I had the benefit of talking to John after the meeting on Thursday, the consultation with the attorney. So there are two things that the consultants are proposing. One is something that this planning board has been considering and even working on its own long before we engage the consultants, and those are regulation changes. The minimum lot size, the lot width, the setbacks, road grade, road radius, the grouping of lots along the road, buffers. So that is part of the recommended changes, addressing what they think as a package will get us a better result from the actual subdivisions. The second is a process change, which again is replacing the site inventory and the conceptual subdivision design, replacing that, enhancing the requirements quite a bit to the 4-step design process and required design review with the planning board. So those are two separate things. So you could do one or the other. What the consultants are saying is if you do both, you'll have a lot better of an opportunity to make sure the regulation changes that are important to you, that the changes that you're looking to make are actually impactful. Like they're actually going to happen because you kind of have a seat at the table before the lot lines are even drawn. Hey, where are we putting these things? Let's go through, show us how this 4-step process worked. So to your point about the groupings of 4, so that's one of the regulation changes, which we can talk about when we get to it, or we can talk about it now. But the idea being just all of the 20 or 30,000 square foot lots developed all right next to one another with the shortest possible road and all of the open space hidden out behind doesn't make as visually appealing of a development as it would if the road was a little bit longer, right? That goes hand in hand, but you have a little bit of a longer road, but then you have, maybe 4 30,000 square foot lots developed together. Then some of the open space comes in, touches the road in between. It's a natural buffer. It's a buffer between these groups. So they had originally proposed 6. The counter proposal was 4. So that's part of the regulation changes that are recommended.
Okay, but are we eliminating, is that required now? Before it was always preferred, but in your read, is this now required? It has to be groups.
Well, let's look at the language. Do you want to skip to that, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's wrap this
So
up here.
design standards for grouping of residential structures. The proposed language is the following standards shall apply to all conservation subdivisions. 6.2.5 all dwelling units shall be grouped in small numbers with each grouping containing no more than 4 adjacent units parcels, and each grouping shall be surrounded by common open space. So the language that was taken out.
It shall.
Shall means must.
Yeah.
And units/parcels mean parcels could be
Yep. Yeah.
This is required now. We can't do any more, line them up.
So, and remember, this proposal is to change that in zoning. An alternative is that you could make that provision part of your subdivision regulations, which the planning board has more flexibility to waive kind of in the course of its business. Yeah. And this was a note that I had after talking to John. I'll make it now. But with all of these changes that are proposed in zoning, it could be that there are certain components that the planning board wants to put in the subdivision regulations, not in zoning, so that you have that flexibility to say, going from 18 to 4 is a pretty dramatic change. Now, the thought is it will have more appealing development of land. But if you don't want them to have to go to the zoning board to put more than 4 together, if you want to entertain that, then you could. The trade-off here is the goal is to tell the developer and their engineer exactly what the community wants. And so if this is what we want, solidifying it in zoning and making that clear and raising the bar to do something different really high is what you should do. If, hey, there's some circumstances where we feel like this could be, appropriate and we kind of want to be the barometer for that, then pull that out and put in your subdivision regulations.
Right, kind of if you jump to page 10 briefly and you go to the comments on the right side, the top one from Steve, item number 2.
I've got it up on the screen if you don't want to flip to it.
Okay, allowing them to group up to 6 units if they provide these. My note was maybe have that as a carrot to gain either access or trails, building, or whatever we want. In the subdivision regulations, we could do it with a waiver. We'd even get into CUPs if we need to. Because the problem we're running into, we'll find out earlier, is we're feeling restricted on using them in zoning. The lawyer says you need the zoning approval when they do a, what do they call it, an SE, right? Special exception, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can push more stuff where we have control, it'll be better for us. Just a thought.
But then you also end up in that dynamic with developers and engineers in front of you, knowing that you have the authority to change that, and you end up in this perspective where you're feeling like you're having to fight for what the rules already are because they're trying to compel you to change that, which that happens. And, I've heard feedback from board members before that they don't like that negotiating that happens, like you're having to jockey for the rules that are already in place. And once you issue a waiver once, even for good cause, that precedence, the people are going to be coming in and they're going to have their sights set on, okay, we'll get a waiver for that, and then we'll, move on.
I think the problem was, it was always preferred, the cluster groups was always recommended, but it wasn't required.
And has it ever happened?
Yeah.
Doesn't happen.
Never.
Not in my term.
And I think that's what the consultant said. Your figures show preferred design of these groupings, but you're not getting that. Even if you just enforced what you already had, you could end up with a better product. But let's take that a step further and let's make it perfectly clear what we want. And the proposal of what we want is groupings of no more than 4.
Well, Ron's point is good. They have a yield plan in their pocket. They also have the conservation subdivision layout in their pocket when they walk in for the conceptual. He said, this is it. That's the thing we have to break.
Yeah.
We don't even want to look at it, talk about it, or anything until we finish the yield plan. And by the way, these are our new regulations that want you to take a different approach than lining up. So they at least have to have 400 feet between them, even if they were on the road, right?
Right.
So that's something, I guess. And there'll be a little bigger lots, 30,000 feet, but.
So we ping-ponged around a little bit. Do we want to go back in order and make sure we don't miss anything?
Sure. I think I was in the 4-step process. That's where I was on page 5. My only note was, I guess they're going to provide some new drawings of what they'll look like. I guess that's what we got today, right? That's a little box up there on the top of page 6.
What you got today is not what probably, yeah, they have drawings in the
They got
back.
these out of the Manitoba thing?
Yeah, that's the
last page right here,
Manitoba.
Jeff.
That's not what
yeah.
they're providing us.
Yeah, that's, he said those they just grabbed. Those actually showed up at the meeting we had in, you and I went to at the Municipal Association.
that you made.
They were the last page of the stuff they handed out, so that's all that is.
If we end up doing this, we would intend to use some of the grant funds we got and hire a graphic designer in their office to draw us specifically, based on our regulations, what we want these developments to look like.
That'd be like an
Yep. And then on page 6, the bottom section, the blue part, that they cut and fill. They had talked about maybe increasing the road grade so there'd be fewer trees cut down. I think we should stay with 7%. But if there is a situation where, due to the topography, we could save a lot of trees, we could waive maybe going to 8% or something. I don't know how the board feels about that. Should we just be strict on the 7?
No, we've given waivers on the 7
Yeah.
before.
Okay.
The one up on Route 9 there, across from the public safety, we gave a waiver for that one.
Okay, yeah.
So, you know, I think the way we have it is, if they have a hardship for, you know, cuts and fills or slope or whatever,
Okay,
they're not shy about coming in for a waiver.
okay, good. I just wanted to run it by everybody.
The only concern that I would have on that, and it's something Scott had actually addressed, if they're making a road that then is the expectation is the town is gonna have to take this road, suddenly the town is gonna now have to own all this infrastructure that's being put in to deal with that, creating an undue burden 20 years from now on our municipality
By increasing the grade,
by
doing,
any of this. If you
Yeah.
look at the way they're doing it to get it in there, they're putting in these catch basins,
Yeah.
these 4 basin systems,
Yeah.
these containments. And then if you look at like the way they're putting some retaining walls in to get some of this, eventually they will degrade.
there've been some meeting house road problems too
Mhm.
with that infrastructure, so.
But I think the language recently, Andy, has been, they retain responsibility, but we retain the ability to go in on an emergency basis. So the primary responsibility is with them. We have access.
But that's not the way it reads like in our regulation, and the way the attorney has presented it is that if they build it to our standard, the expectation is we have to take ownership of it.
Not for the sedimentation.
Well, you're talking about in the 50-foot right of way that we would take over, but not in other things off-site.
There's
They're
been,
not off-site. If you
No,
look
but
at
I'm,
these
I know,
4 basins,
I think we're talking about 2, because we did a lot of, before I was on the board, meeting house.
meeting house, they retain the responsibility.
And then we had Meadowbrook, remember, there was a lot of discussion there, I watched online, I wasn't on the board. And they had to have a maintenance agreement and everything to take that in the future, the town was not responsible
I mean,
for that.
I've been pushing for the right to do it, but not the obligation to do it.
Well,
That's the way.
Plan to address that when you review subdivision regulations again. As it relates to the proposal here, I think the recommendation,
Subdivision changes.
oh, you know, to your point about you have issued waivers before on road grade, I think what the consultants recommended is add some language in your subdivision regulations that make it clear that if having a 8 or 9% road grade will allow you to keep build within the natural features of the lot and not clear cut the whole lot. You know, when I drove them up here and I said, hey, look, like this is a nice subdivision, but it's, they nuked the entire natural environment and built everything up around it. And like, well, with a 7% road grade, of course they did. Just to get the cut and fill, meet the cut and fill and the turning radius requirements, you've got to, clear cut and start over. If you want more developments, and we used during the subcommittee process, you remember, we used Deer Ridge as an example. So Deer Ridge, and it was described as developer preference, but the development in Deer Ridge, the lots weren't clear cut, right? They were cleared enough for the development of the driveway and the house, and that, now that was a traditional subdivision, so that's a little bit different, but there's similarities that carry over, but that has a more rural character feel than does something like out here where they're clearing everything. And so still keeping the requirement at 9, but adding language in the subdivision regulations that say for good cause, including to preserve the natural features of the lot, the planning board will consider a waiver to go, up to 7%.
I'm okay, but I will say, I don't think I've ever seen them clear cut for the road. They go in the clear cut, and then they come back in later. It's already clear cut by the time it comes to us usually. I don't think they've ever cut more trees because of the slope that I know of.
Breezy Way.
Wait.
Breezy Way, behind Village Place, they didn't cut anything in there other than the lots.
And this is where, remember, these are layering on top of each other, Ron. And so I'm fast forwarding, but if you look at this one that's proposed to be added to 6.2.62, where it's talking about buffers, it says if necessary, is a restored enhanced buffer through replanting of native trees greater than 4-inch caliper diameter and native understory vegetation, a buffer management plan shall be provided. when developers see this, they're gonna think twice about clear cutting the lot before they come in for a proposal, because they may save themselves a lot of money in this buffer planting by leaving some of the natural vegetation, which is the goal. And so one change on its own isn't, I don't think, going to create the result that we're looking for, but layering these changes on top of one another, I think builds a better product for the community.
Well, there's already language in subdivision, don't clear cut. There's already language that we have in there.
Just strengthening it, Ron.
Yeah, but I think they clear cut, they log to get money. They basically clear cut the lot. And to put the, to put the houses wherever they want down the road, with flexibility.
I mean, you had a consultant tell you that it's because you have a road grade that's fairly uncommon in New England. And so I would think that that's a reasonable thing if he's saying it. But
Well, Steve Diamond.
What is a
wanted to push
common
that.
road grade?
9
9.
to 10.
Remember
Yeah,
with this campaign, Steve Diamond, he wanted to make it bicycle,
Yeah.
these conservation subdivisions are supposed to be accessible, open to biking, stuff like that. And 7 is better for biking.
Deer Ridge is 10.
You look at, yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
But
in
that
the
would
it
find
entrance?
section?
could.
I'm
yeah,
like in
some
the
section.
entrance of it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think
that wouldn't surprise me.
Ramsdale's like 14.
Well, yeah.
And I mean, it's
You
not.
gotta be a mountain goat to get up that.
Okay. So that's bottom of page 6.
Okay.
And can I make one point real quick?
Go ahead.
This isn't, the consultants aren't done here, right? So there was a deadline to get proposed zoning amendments before this group to make sure that those could be presented in March. There's a few things that are already happening and will continue to happen between now and March and if this gets approved. One is corresponding updates to the subdivision regulations that build out on some of these and reiterate some of these points and the purpose, but also training for this group on the 4-step design process and pulling all of these in, getting the zoning board attending that so they understand the purpose. And so that component of a variance that is the spirit and intent of the ordinance, well, all of a sudden now there's new spirit and intents. We had the chair of the zoning board participating in some of the subcommittee meetings, and she said, oh, absolutely, if we can use this as justification to say, hey, we're not going to issue a variance here because this is the spirit and intent of the ordinance. And then a mock application conducted by the consultants with the group to go through and carry an application through the 4-step design process, and otherwise end with the updated regulations. So the process isn't done. The part that the focus right now is just what needs to go before zoning, but there's a lot more to it.
And to that point, Connor, I think the mock-up, I think is, we're going to 30 and we're doing these groups. It could be a pretty big impact on conservation subdivision. It could be pretty significant. So how much impact that has, nice to know.
Well, the biggest impact is the 130,000. 130,000. I mean, that's of everything that's being proposed for the conservation subdivisions, the singular biggest impact will be the 130,000, and that's just in general residential, neighborhood residential.
Yeah.
So, your village and your town center are still 80, right? Yeah. So I mean, that's another layer on top of this.
Yeah, you can't do a conservation subdivision town center.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Village.
Yeah, so just
But-
village.
To that point, I mean, is there a single conservation subdivision that you can think of that they use 20,000 square foot lots?
Oh,
Can?
Oh, yeah.
Which one?
Yeah.
I'm just,
Young Road,
Young
no, the
Road
new
is-
one is,
The new one, yeah.
Yeah.
the new one, the new plan.
to be clear, you forced into that design, but I mean, other than that, that's been approved previous to that one.
Well, you
I
can come
can't-
back
I'm
under
just-
the new regulations.
Other than the
before
most
he builds.
recently approved subdivision, what else?
But,
We have one in front of us now, it's pretty much all 20.
which one?
We have one in front of us now, it's all 20.
No, I'm saying one that's been, I can't remember one, that's why I was asking.
I've seen a
I
lot of
think
them.
that's the way they're all gonna
They're
end
all
up
coming in
rolling.
that way. That's the
No, I
most
said
common.
one that you've approved that was 20,000 square foot lots.
We answered that.
Yes.
One, not Young Road. Young Road, you forced him into that design. You chose that design for him. He had bigger lots you didn't
We do
like.
not
That wasn't the
choose
only
their
option he
design.
had.
But I'm saying, what's another one?
All right, we'll play history of
Just
planning
said
board
it.
approval.
Can
Yeah,
you
let's
give us
go.
one? We gave
Let's
you one.
move along. We're on page 7.
conventional.
Week.
Yep.
But
Anything on page 7? We covered a lot this down the 4 from 18 and so forth.
Is the planning board feeling like this is appropriate in zoning, or do you want it to be in subdivision? I think you need to make that determination
I
tonight.
think it should be in subdivision.
I don't know about that.
You know, subdivision,
Zoning
Pardon?
has more teeth.
Yeah, it does.
yeah, but, you know, why put it to a two-step process? You know, most subdivisions, zoning never says. So this is a level of, you know, research, and they've never done this before. So.
Well, it might be good.
You gotta start somewhere.
This might be a
why-
good
why put-
training
why put the
exercise for
applicant
them.
through- Why put them through it twice? What if we don't agree with them?
Meet the regulations. They don't have to go through the
Right.
process twice.
Right.
Yeah.
You should set regulations that you want accomplished.
Right.
I'm not telling you you have to want groups of 4.
Well, subdivision's planning, it's planning, so if they have to go through, DBA,
Just to get more groupings of more than 4. Or whatever you set it at. The consultants originally proposed 6. Groupings of no more than 6.
I guess I'm having trouble putting it in the zoning, I just think that.
Well, it's already in
They don't
zoning.
usually do subdivisions, now you're making them do subdivisions.
We're not making them do anything.
Well, if you put it in zoning,
Only if they want relief.
okay, so they give them relief, then we get it, but we don't like it.
It doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter at that point, and they have to show a hardship.
And
So
spirit
the,
and
we're
intent.
trying to do,
the
make
thing
them
is you've got to
show a
get a
hardship.
ZBA that has enough teeth to sit there and say, this is not a hardship, it's a want.
We could too.
Well, the thing they should actually be approaching is, we approve 2 plans. We approve the yield plan, we approve a
Right.
conservation. If you can't do the conservation subdivision,
Go build a
you've already got the
conventional.
yield plan.
Right, go build your
I
conventional.
think that
plan.
was Mark's point he brought up at one point
Yep.
too. He said, no, they don't have to get a relief.
I'm not saying it belongs in one or the other. I think this group needs to decide where you want to see it. If you want to have more teeth, put it in zoning.
I think that if you put it in zoning, from my standpoint, I like it because I'm the one that sits here and is, pardon the expression, but the hard ass with these guys. And I'm calling it out and nitpicking the regulation. If it's in zoning, there's nothing for me to nitpick about it. It is what it is.
So if it's
All
in
right, any
zoning,
consensus zoning or
Zoning.
zoning? Okay.
do you want it to be 4? Or do you want, if you're going to put it in with more teeth, do you want to give a little bit of flexibility and say 6?
My opinion is I'm fine saying 6 if we're going to put it in zoning. Because if you think about it, if they did it on like both sides of a road or something, you're 3 and 3 or however you break it up.
Anybody agree with him? 6? Still thinking about it.
I don't think 3 and 3 is
I think you could do 6 and 6 on either side of the road.
Right.
Based
Yeah.
on how it's written.
Then
I
you
don't
lose
think- I don't
the,
know.
I like 4.
I like 4 too.
He liked 4.
I like
That's- yeah.
4, yeah.
I'm just trying to, if I look at the layout,
4 with a 100-foot buffer between the 4 groups if they put it on the road. That's the difference.
And we're not adding that much road,
Yeah.
right? We're just saying you have to break it up a little bit.
Right.
I mean, it's not like,
30 acres under the 130,000 would only give them about a dozen units anyway.
see, like if I look at the one that was given to us here, like, and my crappy eyes here, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got the middle one with 5. You have the other one that's got way more than 6. So
he's looking at something different.
cheat sheet, sorry. I'm just trying to think of, if I think of a layout of how things are clustered in a grouping of 6. 4, I think, gets a little small, where 6 might be a little more reasonable. And I would say it's going to be, you're either on one side of the road or on both sides of the
You
road.
on page 26?
That's it, Vanessa?
Yes. Yes, that one.
Which one do you
Page
want?
26 is the one I was looking at, where it has the conventional plan
I'm
versus
looking
the
at this one from
conservation.
something different, so
sorry.
I don't know that I'm going to have.
No, that's,
Yeah.
no, it's.
26, page 26, oh, yeah. that's-
Yeah, mine doesn't have
I
page.
can
Okay.
share that.
But Andy, is this the one? Keep going.
Close, keep going.
This one.
That
No,
kinda, but not quite.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
want me to share?
You're getting closer.
that one. Oh, the one you just went by. Go back to that one.
This one?
Nope, that's not it.
Well, but that, I mean, that you can use that as an example.
Yeah.
That's, you're not getting, like, if you look at, counted out 6 in there and then created a buffer
Yep.
versus 4 in creating a
You
buffer.
guys see my cursor? If you look like right here, I mean, that's probably not quite a 100-foot buffer, but the idea is that you're breaking up the house lots versus back here that are just all.
Like if you look at that bottom one where you just had it there, you bottom left, or even that central one,
Yep.
where you get 4 to 6 into something like that, you're really.
Also, I should put buffer.
Also stick with 4. You can change it next year.
I'm not gonna,
Well, they can give away, they can give
Well, we
relief, they
can
can give
give-
relief, they can
give
give
relief.
relief.
looking at this design, these two designs, right?
Yeah.
Conventional versus
Yep.
this.
Yep.
If you look at that, and I know this will probably lean towards your favor, but there's not much road difference between these two designs. And developers are going to go back to conventional, which you guys like, but you don't conserve any land in that scenario.
I don't think they're gonna go back to conventional. Oh, you will if they have to put in the same amount of road, but the objective should be to make sure we're giving them the opportunity to preserve land and not necessarily have to cluster everything in so tight that it's unreasonable, but make it look aesthetically pleasing and conserve
But,
that
you
land.
know, I don't think it's the same road they will go conservation. I think they'll go conventional
Yeah.
because everybody wants more land. If you get a house, it's 30,000 square feet or 2 acres, makes a difference to you.
I
So I
don't think
think-
that's backed by data, though. I mean, these people are buying small lots because that's.
Well, those are kicking
Because
out.
they're all coming from Dover. But
that's-
if you
Barrington-
offered 2-acre lots, I bet they'd sell just as
3-acre
quick.
lots. Because they're just-
But we're not
If
offering
you
them.
put that house on that lot or a 2 acre lot, which one would sell for more?
About the same, because it's based on the same value.
Negative.
But what I'm saying is you don't conserve land. The purpose is to conserve land. It's not, so trying to address the look thing, and that's why I like the 4, that was kind of why I was leaning with the buffer in between. It gives that more look, but it spreads it out. But you're gonna get to a tipping point that they're gonna build a conventional thing, and then you don't conserve land. The point is to conserve land.
What
Is
the
that the
percent,
point,
we
though,
have,
is-
what do we have, 70% of
build
our
houses
town
that
in
people want.
conservation currently?
No, if you were gonna build houses that people
The
want.
number
And unless roads,
includes land and current
infrastructure
use, which
Those are
they're
funds.
different things.
Right,
but
they are different things.
I don't
Um,
agree.
yeah.
100%. I'm just.
I'll
I
send
don't
you
agree.
the numbers.
I think, is it our job to generate developments that people want to live in?
Well, obviously, they're spending, they're paying
It's-
$1 million for
it's a-
these
it's a
houses up
yes.
here, and
I think that.
And 3/4 acre lots.
Most people prefer to live in a conventional than a conservation.
I guess if that was the argument, you would be pushing to build smaller lots with minimum size homes for homeless people, because that's what people need. That's the market demand for the most demand is for that house. But you're not, I mean, that's not the planning board's job, it's for the safe and effective development of the town, et cetera, et cetera. But conserving land is the point of a conservation subdivision. Reduce infrastructure and conserve land. That's the point of a conservation subdivision. If you make it so hard that they're going back to conventional, you get what you want from a personal standpoint, but you don't conserve any land and do anything good for the town.
but also the voice of the people has been, they want to keep the rural character.
So-
This is not rural character. This is not rural character. The
The feedback we get.
conventional
They
is.
like conventional better, because they prefer living in a conventional subdivision with more space between houses than it's conservation.
Yes,
I heard that
100%.
from
That's what we
anybody
hear.
that we want to live in there. You hear from the neighbors that we don't want any development, and I agree with you there. But nobody
No.
says, boy, I'm buying this house for $1 million, but boy, I would have loved a conventional lot.
Well,
You've
no,
heard
I
that?
think to reiterate Bob's point, I think, and I hear this too, I think we have a responsibility to be responsive to the residents in Barrington, right? The ones that live here now, not the ones that are buying in Barrington. And the residents that live here now have concerns with the style of development that developers are choosing right now in the community. And so I think the point that you're making is some of these changes that are being proposed are to make conservation subdivisions look and feel a little bit more like conventional subdivisions. And at some point, you may end up in a circumstance where a developer chooses to do a conventional subdivision instead of a conservation subdivision. And that's a road we may have to cross at some point in the future. In communities across the state, what the consultant said is there are communities grappling with whether or not to require the conservation subdivision model and not even allow the conventional subdivision. And so if we get to that point, that could be something this community considers. And so I think I definitely hear that component from existing residents that the development that happens, they'd like to see it in fitting with the rural character in Barrington. And just putting that into regulations is notably difficult, right? That's one of the reasons we sought the help of consultants to help figure out how we could do this. And there's no guarantee that it will work, and it could have the effect that you're talking about, which is developers choose a conventional subdivision instead of conservation. And that the detriment to the community is that we don't have this contiguous open space that's preserved. If we can strike a good balance between having conservation subdivisions that look and feel a little more rural and a little more conventional, then and developers choose those, I think that's the goal that the subcommittee identified. That's what the consultant set out to do, and that's what the proposal is. But I think we always have to be prepared to be reactionary. If it goes a different direction than we want, we reach into the quiver and pull out another tool.
And I also don't think there's a problem with having some conventional. Right now, all we're getting is conservation subdivisions. I don't think it's a problem to have a conventional thrown in here and there. It kind of diversifies the town and offers a lot more to people that want to live here. My son who wants to live, he doesn't want to live in this. So he's not looking in Barrington because there's nothing available.
Well, there'd be little small groups like Scruton Pond Road.
I was just pulling that one up.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about people would pay more, and so I was trying to think where were two lots sold. So this is the Scruton Pond subdivision, right? So you have 9.1 and 9.2, right? I don't know if you can see the numbers. 9.2 is this kind of bow tie shaped one, but those both sold. 9.1 is 2.6 acres and sold for 185,000. Well, I guess it originally sold for 160. And then resold for 185. So say the number's 160. The other lot is 12 acres. Now that's not 12 acres that can be subdivided. That's just 12 acres of more land. To Jamie's point about, hey, the value is the value. They paid 250,000. And so, that's probably the closest example of a traditional subdivision with extra land and people willing to pay for it. I don't think we can draw sweeping conclusions based on that, but and if you look at the land value that the assessor assigns, those 12 acres, if it wasn't in current use, would be assessed at 122,000, and the 2.6 acres is 97,000. So I mean, pretty close.
Yeah, but isn't like 80% of that 12 acres, like of the lot, it's like a turd. It's wet. Pardon the expression, but I'm just going to call it what it is.
There are undesirable parts of that lot.
That better word. Undesirable.
Okay, where are we here?
So we decided in zoning. That's what I heard.
Yep, 4. So that's on page 7, the 4. Anything else on page 7? Anybody wants to talk about? Hearing none, we'll go to page 8.
Do we need to talk about the outer perimeter of 100 feet? That was one of the concessions.
Well, yeah, that's what I want to jump to here.
Okay, you're going to 8 for that?
Yep, I'm going to 8 for that. Yeah, this will be separated, 6254, I think that's fine. 6254, I got that checked off here. Looks good. Any questions on 6254?
I was talking 6253.
Oh, go back to 3?
Well,
Sure.
where they removed the requirement that there be a 100-foot buffer around the entire development.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I think we agreed on that.
Yeah.
Why?
Go to 200 feet, right?
Oh, 200, yeah, okay. I thought you were saying no, scrap it and don't worry about
That's
it.
what I thought
And
too.
then
I was
the
like,
next
wait a
page-
minute here.
626.
Which is different, yeah.
Right,
626 is
625.
buffer, right?
That's fine.
Okay.
I'd like to point out, they have, notice how they remove that language cluster often because it gets confused with cluster subdivisions and groups of houses.
Right, and the cluster word is
We get
everywhere in our
work on
regulations.
using groups as opposed to cluster, it
Yes.
does avoid a lot of confusion.
Yep. So where are we? 626? 200 feet, everybody agrees, and you go to the next page, you've got added, 100-foot buffer is also required along the side and rear of the property, or may be reduced to 50 feet by the planning board, if appropriate. I think that's good to have the option. Suppose it's just, next to conservation land already. Need a 100-foot buffer, maybe 50 would be fine. Plus, this all eventually may end up as part of the conservation land if they deed it to them.
So what's the difference if you have a 100-foot buffer?
Well,
As
it may
opposed to
allow them to
reducing
get closer to that area if they're putting these little clusters.
What the
I'm
consultants
sorry.
described is it reduces the land that's in conservation. So if you have that buffer requirement that's part of the developed lots and it abuts, like John mentioned, already conserved land, well, reasonably, if you didn't have that buffer requirement, the lot size is probably going to end up being smaller and that you end up with more of the square footage of the land in conservation or as part of the open space.
The only thing that I think we have to be really cognizant of, and this is where I think of the existing people that are here. If you're a person who built your house far out back and you have this nice area, but there's this big parcel of land that unfortunately you don't have the capital to go buy up, and then somebody comes in and puts a conservation subdivision in, and they stuff a bunch of houses that are now suddenly 50 feet off of your property line, and you're looking right through the woods at all these houses where you have had a beautiful contained view. I'm gonna tell you, I want the 100-foot buffer.
Yeah, you guys ran into that in Meadowbrook. Remember the guy that we actually
Yep.
did, you guys did a site with this before it was on the board.
Meadowbrook, Young Road, they
Yep.
both were the same.
But they did put some trees in, as I remember, right? The developer?
But with conventional, it would be
Yeah.
less. Setbacks are less for conventional.
Yeah.
So the risk is higher for conventional than is conservation.
Yeah.
Remember, it's 100 foot, but they can go down to 50 under certain circumstances, so it's still
Yeah.
100 foot. It's just, as John said, maybe it's conservation.
I just think they're all gonna come in and be like, I wanna be 50 feet back.
Well, yeah, but it's our option. We'll tell them to, you know,
Maybe we should clarify when that 50 is gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't feel like the language.
Maybe,
Yeah. Cause they're all gonna ask for 50.
because if John, to Andy's point, if we say if there's a neighbors there,
For
I-
a good
I-
cause shown, such as abutting existing permanently conserved land,
something like that.
other natural features,
Developable land.
That may-
undevelopable land.
Additional
Yes.
flexibility.
yeah, I mean, if it's wetlands or something nobody
Yep.
could develop.
Some guardrails around it.
Yeah, for good cause shown.
Yeah,
For
if you have-
instance.
And then the language. Yeah.
having some bumpers around it, I think is
Yep.
important.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
No, I gotta compare and contrast one if we're done with this. I wanna look at 6255 on page 8. Page 8. And then I wanna jump to 6311, parentheses, no, I'm sorry. What do I wanna jump to? Next one should be 6255 and then 626, parentheses, 3.
That's not one.
Can we get through like one of
Yeah,
them
it's
before we
on
move to the
page
next?
10.
Well, it's relative to access. I think he's saying maybe they're conflicting.
There's a conflict. On page 10, 6263,
Oh,
you got it? And the other one was whatever I said.
6255.
Okay, look at 6255. The preferences for all groups shall obtain driveway access for interior streets. But then it goes on to break up the 200-foot setback. And then if you jump to the next one on 6263, no grading, land disturbance, building loss, construction, blah, 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 excepting for primary access road and utility crossings and trails. It doesn't allow you to put driveways in, which the other one does. In other words, I think if we stick to 6225, if we continue this conflict, people are gonna come in and say, I wanna put shared driveways in through the buffer, and we don't want that. I mean, that's what happened to the 100-foot buffer on Young Road, right? By the time you had 14 driveways going through a 100-foot buffer in the original design. So I would eliminate on 6255 anything after the word interior streets.
I think the counterpoint that the subcommittee considered was Toll End Road, the conservation subdivision at the beginning of Toll End Road, close to 125. So that development seems to feel in fitting with the rural character of Barrington. And there's a ton of curb cuts. And those shared driveways, those shared driveways are a joke.
Each one has
Because
seven-
as soon as they moved
Each of
in,
the houses in the back is 75 feet on the building setback line, 100
Yep.
feet, but there is no 100-foot buffer. There
But-
is none,
yeah, but that,
just crap. Well, that's my opinion.
yeah, I mean, I think there
Desirable, I think, is what we decided.
That's what I want
Right.
to.
people in the community that feel like a development like that is more in fitting with the character of Barrington than even these ones that
Oh,
are
yeah.
clustered
indeed.
together.
But I think what we're trying to do with that 200-foot buffer is just make it inviolable.
So,
Utility crossings in a subdivision road only, everybody has to take access off the subdivision. Does anybody agree with that?
I think it's more desirable.
To keep that buffer. I mean, we're going to such an effort by all of these steps, 4-inch trees,
mhm.
this, that, and the other thing. But don't worry about it. You can put a shared driveway
Put all
right
your
through those
driveways right
trees.
through it, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think, I agree with you.
okay, so we're up at 6255.
We'll
Is that where it
end-
was?
We'll end the interior streets.
Yeah. Is that good?
Excellent.
And that layers on,
Outstanding.
layered with that,
I'm sorry I'm
John,
being such a pain in the.
is the road radius,
4 miles or access existing street,
Maximums.
100-foot buffer may be retained in the driveway entrances, maybe.
Take it all out.
All right, you could leave till retained, huh? Want to leave that in? Your best judgment. You're the wordsmith around here. We just don't want to suggest that, despite what everybody says on the other one, and all the effort we're going through for the green belt, don't worry about it. You can put a couple of driveways through. You can put 14 driveways through.
Right, this way, we could take that out, to go to ZBA like Young Road, you get the bear, you know.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll understand that that's.
ZBA will be brought along, has already been brought along with the process, we'll bring them along more, they'll understand.
A little training for them too.
The top of page 10, consider amending figure 4A in the subdivision regulations, road design standards, from a minimum angle of 70 degrees to 50 degrees to allow for an entrance design flexibility to maximize the benefit of the buffer along existing streets. The roads must intersect at 90 degrees. So what they were describing is you can build roads in the natural topography that screen the development behind. But when we have a minimum, from a minimum of 70 degrees to 50 degrees. So when we have a minimum of 70, that doesn't allow them, that's a pretty wide turn. If we allow them to have a little bit of a tighter turn, now they can like S-turn in and you don't see the development. The 200 feet is enough. And so the proposal from the subcommittee was to leave it at 70, but say for good cause, again, this is in the subdivision regulations, for good cause such as screening the development behind, the planning board will consider going down to 50.
Yeah, I had actually keep it at 90 degrees plus or minus 10, which is a regulation for the first 50 feet.
Mm-hmm.
That would satisfy anybody, sight lines and everything, and
Yep.
satisfy the regulation. And then beyond that, granting anything that will, suppose the houses are here, you don't want the road approaching this way, you want it to swing this way.
Yep.
So the houses won't be seen, because I think that's what we,
I like the 50 feet, you know, have to go to a right angle.
yeah.
I think that's a safety
So
issue.
that'll be in subdivision regulations,
Okay,
we'll add that.
Okay.
Yep, don't forget.
In my example, is New Plains Road,
Which one?
New Plains Road up 125,
Mm-hmm.
it seems to me like people just decide I've waited long enough and I'm going.
There's another accident there.
Yesterday. There was one en route at the intersection of Route 9 and 126 as well yesterday, which is right where I got rear-ended.
I think old little Pip have trouble.
Yeah, what
looking back.
happened to that one? They just didn't observe the stop sign?
They had the whole road
I
shut
think it's hard
down.
to look back like that.
But if.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
But what happens is it's because of that intersection. I'm surprised the state hasn't changed that at this
All you have
point.
to do is make that turn that's there,
Yeah, that's what I do, is I pull up to
Pull
the
up to
turn
the
now
turn
and then
and then
make
go
the
Two
left.
turn.
planes
yeah.
road, there's no.
And you
way
can
to do
see
that.
better, your
Yeah,
line of
you
sight's
can,
better.
you can see everything.
New planes, I'm telling you, I've been back up there 3 times.
The problem with
That lane
Newtown,
was open to go.
You're gonna
in.
take your license away soon enough, Ron. You don't have to worry about that. We'll get you. We'll get those three
We'll get
cars.
you
Yeah,
the-
get on one of the
Cars.
yeah, I know.
We'll get you a Gruber.
I went the other way, but if the traffic coming the other way, what
Please
happened?
drive me.
The problem with Newtown Plains is the cemetery.
Yeah.
Well,
You
they
gotta
had,
dig up the
actually
bones.
had a plan, we own the, I think it's town land on the
Yeah.
other side of the cemetery.
Okay.
They were gonna put it in there,
Okay.
T
Get
intersection.
through this.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
All right.
Where's that, Bob? Figure it-
I think I'm almost done with my
That's the
stuff
corner,
here,
that
200
is a new
disturbance, depth of 200 feet.
Yeah, just experience.
Yeah, good for, it's, the only access should be for an access road and utilities. And then it still went back to that 6311 in our regulations. Did we want to strike that out? Did we discuss that? Did we, 6311? Which allows 6 units in a structure in a conservation subdivision.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you're in like,
Page 26, page 26. Bottom of the page, near the bottom of the page. So you can put like 6-unit rental in the conservation subdivision. Same?
Yeah, so we proposed 4. That
Right.
was the, and
No,
then
no.
Laura came back and said it conflicts with the workforce housing RSA that says 5.
Yeah.
Now, I don't see how that's a conflict, but she
This one is
says,
not 4 units, this is in one building.
right.
6 units in one building.
and we're-
Nothing anywhere else.
That should be changed to that.
It shouldn't be in there.
Not at all.
No, conservation subdivisions should have 1 family and 2 families, not multifamily housing.
This is, you're under cluster groups. So you're under that cluster
I'm a-
provision, that's why using the cluster versus a grouping, that cluster provision without lots would be where you have the 6 units in a building. But you're taking that out, you're leaving the attached and getting rid of detached in the cluster groups.
I thought when we did that, we changed it to 4, because if you look at the village district,
Yeah, we did.
that
That's
has
when the
a,
lawyer stepped in and said it has to be 5. That is, that's zoning, it's number
Zoning
3.
article number-
We had changed,
Number 3.
Andy, we changed the note in the table of uses.
Yep.
That's where from 8, no structure may contain more than 8 down to 4. That was the proposed change.
And
And
then
she said it should be 5 to coincide with
With her
workforce
workforce.
housing rules.
Regulation, should there was a state regulation, it had to be 5.
but isn't the problem once you go above 4, you're no longer considered a residential, it's a commercial structure? Isn't at that point now you've got to go to,
The
you have
site
to have
plan is
hard.
anything after 2. The site, right? It,
anything
after 2 is site plan.
Yeah.
More
Right.
than just zoning.
Yeah.
Multifamily housing is site plan.
Yeah, after 2. Durham doesn't even allow duplexes in their residential areas. Just
You
drives me
remember how
crazy.
angry-
If we just pick and choose from every
She doesn't like
town in the
that.
country,
Well, I tried that, and she said, when I showed the used, you know,
I think, no, duplexes I think are allowed, Sean. Duplexes are allowed.
you have to allow
That's what I
duplexes
said.
everywhere you allow
one
single-family
and 2
house.
family housing is allowed.
You have to allow duplex everywhere you allow
Yeah,
single-family
multifamily
house.
is
They'd
not
have to have
two,
double
it's
lot.
three.
It's 3 and
Three
above.
and
yeah.
above, yeah.
But I don't, but
But to Andy's point, it was the table of uses, we were going from 8 to 4, and then Laura said,
Well, he's
do
going
it,
back
make
to-
5.
Why?
He's going back to, hold on, let's go back to 633.
I still don't get why she wants 5, and I apologize for not being able to be at the meeting.
okay.
I was
That's
still
all
at
right.
work
It was-
the other day.
There's,
regulations.
there's an
that's it.
RSA
But
that
it
talks about
conflicts.
workforce housing, that it's 5 or more for workforce
But
housing.
we're not building workforce housing.
Where we allow workforce housing in that
Well,
zone, we'd have
But
to allow a 5-unit
this is not
building.
conservation subdivision that you're looking at here, number 3. Number 3 is conventional development.
Yeah,
Right,
See, we got 2 things going here.
yeah, so let's
But-
circle back.
but
Let's
you,
go, we're only going from,
Let's stay in the
Article
conservation
12
section and go
only.
back.
right, but even in conservation subdivision, I didn't think.
But let's bridge that gap, because I don't think that same recommendation from the attorney applies to conservation subdivisions like it does to traditional subdivisions. I think you could take that 6 and make it whatever you want in conservation subdivisions. What the workforce housing law says is that you have to and multifamily developments of at least 5 units per structure must be allowed somewhere in town.
Right.
And so where we,
That's what she said, 5.
so put in
That's
your,
fine, I agree with that in non.
in non-conservation
Conservation.
subdivision.
In
What
con-
John's saying is in conservation subdivision, where we're not limited by that, it says 6 now, and you want it to be
Two.
2.
4.
No, we don't, conservation subdivision, we don't want rentals,
Okay.
do we?
No.
You wanna put rental housing in there, you know that's what's gonna happen.
Is everybody,
Talk about 2, I
Yeah, I can do that.
Tracking?
There should be single-family duplexes, like our regulations.
Okay.
Okay, so we
I
gotta
discussed
go
it.
to,
Vanessa, do you agree about that?
I believe that that's talking about cluster designs
Mm-hmm.
with no lot lines, attached structures, that you're.
6-unit,
Right, that's what
rental
you talked
unit.
about previously in the other one, about getting rid of detached and
It's
doing
units and
attached.
parcels.
But
Is
it
that what you're talking
specifically
about?
says single-family attached dwelling. No, I guess it still could be a rental.
Structures containing attached dwellings may not contain more than 6 units.
Yeah, so your
2 units make a duplex.
your upper and lower limit, Jamie, are 1 to 2.
So does everybody agree that should be a maximum of 2 units in one structure? Conservation.
In conservation
subdivision.
subdivision.
Yep.
Right, and that's-
You want to put them on 125, which is regulation 3, could be that, but that's a different story. Okay, so we got to change 6311, is that okay?
Yeah, to 2.
2. Sorry, I'm such a pain here. Just wanted
Or
to,
to get it right, we only have one chance a year.
what-
That's not pain.
That's
so I wanted
why
to
we're
get
here.
through this stuff.
First I heard of
That's
that,
why we're
so
here. We're not gonna be here.
It's been a minute.
I think that was the last thing I had on my list, 6 units, okay, good, that's done, we're getting that to 2, change to 2 units. All right, I'm done with my stuff. Anybody else have things they wanna? We're still gonna stay,
Can we talk about trails?
we're still gonna continue on Article 12. I just wonder if anybody else had Article
Can we talk
12.
about trails and connectivity and development of trails real quick? So I think there was some miscommunication between where we left off last time, which, to summarize, this group felt like if it was possible to require these provisions as part of the conservation subdivision, public access, trail development, trail connectivity, maybe parking,
Yep.
then that's the preferred option of this group. So we had the attorney reviewed it, we talked to the consultants about it, and because the conservation subdivision provisions are optional, conventional subdivision still exists, we can require as a component of the conservation subdivisions that these are requirements. There's a trail interconnectivity group that's been meeting. There's a representative from the Snowmobile Club and staff and Trails Committee and Conservation Commission, Lands Committee, et cetera. And they felt like parking is something that maybe we don't want to require all of the time. And their thought was, if the focus is building these connected trail networks, that somebody can leave their house, get on trails and explore trails from their house, then you don't need as much parking opportunities. And parking opportunities invites users from away, and maybe we don't want that everywhere. We have some core hubs, like in the town center, like, the Goodwill Conservation, the Southeast Land Trust. So we have strategically positioned parking areas, but we don't necessarily need parking areas in every neighborhood. Maybe there's a circumstance where you want one, and I think we'll need to write the language to make it, make that clear. But this evolution has also landed that these requirements are much better suited for your subdivision regulations than zoning. So the public access, the trails, because you as a board need the flexibility to work with the applicants and determine what the priorities are. And with the 4-step design process, you'll be able to do that. Part of that process, when you build it out in your subdivision regulations, will be, we're looking at, it already talks about placement of trails and things like that, but you'll be looking at that specifically, and the requirements in subdivision regulations will make it clear that if there are existing trails, you're required to maintain the entry and exit point. If there aren't trails, you're required to establish trails. You're required to have public access on the property. So this is going to be, the proposal is that this is in subdivision. There's no density bonus. There's no anything else. No carrot, it's just a stick, but in subdivision, so you have some flexibility.
The only concern I have on that, and I'll use, for example, the one that was built out the old Guptal pit. I can't remember the name, but of what
Bending
it
Brook.
called them, Mending Brook or
Bending Brook.
I'm like, I don't know.
Could be Mending Brook.
But they were, one of the targets was that the original access road was gonna be retained as a parking area for people to be able to head back in and fish, and I don't think it's there at this point.
It's right next to the cistern. It's just gravel instead of paved.
Yeah, I don't even know if you could get into it to park at this
Yeah,
point.
there's 4 spots. I parked there the
Is
other
it?
day when I walked around. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't look like much. You'd have to know that's where you're supposed to park.
Right.
And I think there's supposed to be some signage there, but,
Yeah.
but on that note, I'll say, if this doesn't pass, which I hope it does, you know, to get into, or if you add it into site review, but, you know, there's murmur from 2 developers currently saying, if you're gonna require me to do stuff, I'll just keep it and not give it to the town, the open space parts, because, you know, it's more a financial burden and there's no benefit to it. You know, so I just.
This
just
isn't,
point that out
this
there.
isn't required if it's turned over to the town. This is required.
Right.
Open space required.
Yeah,
So they could still be required for it to be public access and have trails. They don't have to turn it over to the town, but it would still carry those requirements.
No, it does not.
Which we kind of do, right? I mean, that's the
Right
kind of
now,
the
if
big issue
they
with us.
if they turn over the town, we can require it. If they don't, they don't have to.
Right.
Specifically says they don't have to.
And that's what we're trying to resolve.
Cause they do
Private
it, and
property
then
rights, so.
they're like.
Or
"Nope,
things, you
we
could put
keep it
that in
all."
subdivision regulations today to require it.
Mhm. The point being, the conservation subdivision provisions of our zoning is not required.
Right.
It is an optional provision that comes with, applicants or developers or engineers have to balance what is in their best interest. But they don't have to develop the conservation subdivision provisions. If we end up in a situation where we're going to require conservation subdivisions, we likely wouldn't be able to carry over that requirement without something like a density bonus going along with it. And so.
So, Mr. Chairman, with these changes,
Yep.
feel comfortable and going forward for the
I think we
zoning
should,
amendment for the
for
public
what
hearing
we've done,
7th.
we can proceed.
Thoughts
Unless,
of everybody?
do you want to vote on what we've done?
If there's a consensus, I have the changes.
Okay,
written
so
down.
on the 7th, we can just do a formal. Okay.
You did all the first part? All the
So that's
changes
all,
there?
that's,
We started with number 12. And
I
as
said
a,
you were voting on
Connor up,
everything.
so.
no, yeah.
Do
we
you have
wanna make
anything
sure-
else to comment?
I just
Oh,
wanted
he's
to,
got the good
work? Is that us?
We didn't hold you
He's
up.
got those 3 little ones at home saying,
That's-
tuck me in tonight.
By now, are you kidding me?
mine.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, the consultant said that he could, they could also put, information together to describe a little bit more and for the, voter guide as well.
Oh, yeah. that'd be
Because I know
good.
we have a small explanation, but like
Mhm.
to go
Yeah.
more in depth of what to provide. I said that would be, sounds like a great
Good
idea
kind of
to do it.
hinting that we've been listening to people and. this is what we
100%.
want
So,
to, Respond to what
I didn't
the
have a chance
comments
to
have been.
tell Connor that yet, but that he said he would be like to work on that for us.
Okay. So any more comments on 12?
Okay.
We can start going back
Alright.
to,
Thank you, Connor.
Page 1.
thank you very much for coming and.
And in the beginning,
Back in 1722, when all the rich people from Portsmouth got all of Barrington's land.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me just, to go over the ones that we just talked about with, in the non-public, the questions that she had, in general, or do you guys want to go through them all again?
I think we've kind of settled on most of this stuff, huh?
So zoning article 1, we've already have
Yep.
established that. Zoning article 2 with the nursing facility, the table of uses, the more appropriate is to have it be a special exception, not as a CUP. And go through the zoning board. Zoning,
So that was
sorry, I'm going
number
too
2?
fast. Yeah. That's what she
But it's
talked
still not allowed, well, we currently don't have it allowed in,
in the 2.
1 and 2. And they
General
would have-
residential
right.
and neighborhood
and
residential.
they would have to get a special exception. Nothing we can do about that, apparently.
And then, the multifamily housing units, that's what we were discussing before.
Yep.
The new change or the new proposed zoning amendment, in the general residential and the neighborhood residential, as a conditional use permit, adding the footnote number 19, that only one structure shall contain no more than 5 dwelling units.
Yep.
Instead of the 4. The 4 was a conflict with state law, and so on here it says 4. So this was done
Okay.
before we talked to us,
Yep.
but now will be 5.
5, yep.
So on the January 7th, you'll see it as 5.
Unless you do 4, except for workforce housing. I'm just saying,
I agree.
because
We
we
could
allow
put that
workforce
footnote
housing.
in,
If
could
they
we?
propose workforce housing, then it's obviously it's a 5.
So
If they don't,
that being said, that's already in town center and regional commercial already have those footnotes 6 and 18 that those you can require more units. Is that what you're saying? Or you want to change the workforce housing?
I would just change it to 4, except for workforce housing developments.
Right, an approved workforce housing development. Because if they're doing an approved workforce housing development, it should come with a deed restriction.
And all the other goodies.
Right.
But then that limits your town center and your regional commercial.
Yeah, everything to 4. What? Say that again?
So town center is where we want to encourage the increased density. That's why it was not touched, as well as the regional commercial, it's permitted.
I don't think this is a density change. I think it's an optics change. Instead of 8 units in a building, you'd have 4 units in a building, so they just have to build more buildings so it looks nicer.
Nope. That's not what this is. This is one structure only.
Per structure.
No, only one structure
Four
is
units.
allowed on the
Structure of
land.
5 units.
I thought we were changing the footnote from 8 to 4.
Nope. Nope, look here. Adding footnote number 19, there should be only one structure contains no more, just 4, but it'll be 5
Yeah.
units.
I don't know where, I guess I'm confused where all the extra language comes from. It was, thought it was just change 8 to
Nope.
4,
Nope.
Nope.
no structure.
Nope.
Nope.
I don't understand that change, so do it.
We'll see how it flies.
It doesn't make
Good
any sense.
answer.
but- It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I
but-
think the Winkley Pond thing threw everybody off. That's where initially we wouldn't allow it in that zone.
So you just gotta subdivide and do 2 lots?
Yeah, put 2 houses in.
What's the purpose?
Well, just the character of the neighborhood.
It's still the same
If you
development,
read-
you just gotta split the
I
2
don't
lots.
understand why
And
we,
what they're gonna do is they're gonna make the
Density.
driveway come in on the split share. They're gonna
Right.
split it down with the driveway access right down the middle.
have 2 houses.
And then, yeah, you're gonna have one on the right, one on the left.
No,
Get the
now they
same
could.
No, now they're gonna have 2 5-unit
Right.
houses.
On one lot.
You're not, what you're only changing is you gotta subdivide his land before you build on
Yeah.
it. You're not
But you
changing
have that
anything,
contiguous-
density wise.
Uplands as well.
Yeah, it depends upon the, yeah.
And
And on the lot.
you'd have, so you're gonna have to have, I mean, theoretically, if we did a zoning change, if the zoning change passed going to the larger lot size, to get a 5-unit building on there, they've gotta have 15 acres on one lot and 15 acres
Yeah.
on another
So you
lot.
gotta have a 30-acre lot before you could do this.
Which is,
Winkley didn't have.
which honestly, here's what I see them doing. I see them putting in a 5-unit building on something like that because it is the cheapest, easiest way to build it.
Oh, yeah.
They gotta sell it though at the end of the day, so the marketing conditions.
No, they rent them for $3,800 a month, Ron. They
Right.
don't care about selling it. $3,800 a month, and they got a line waiting to get in.
Yep.
3,800.
And 50
Probably not
bucks,
those ones that are
and
garages.
$50 for each dog on top of that.
And they got a
So,
line, they're kicking people out and they're not doing maintenance. One woman went 3 weeks without a stove, and they're like, if you want, move out, we got someone else who'll move in tomorrow.
For the broken stuff.
Huh? For the broken stove.
Central Falls Realty.
I called them up and had a stove the next day. I'm like, come on, get her a stove.
Yeah.
right.
Because they gotta provide hot water, right? That's about the only thing.
But I'm just saying,
The plus side is I mean, if they do it, the land's not gonna get developed from that standpoint because it's, you're gonna have a fair amount of conserved land out of it.
Right.
you encumber all that land for a small footprint.
Right. It's just gonna look like hell. I mean, it doesn't have to look like hell, but there's a high probability.
Well,
it
the
might.
other option would be to squeeze more units in. 4 buildings, they'd have 3 buildings or something. At least we're limited it to 1 building.
Mhm. No, I agree.
Okay.
Making sure that everybody knows it's one building.
Do you still want to discuss 4 versus 5 if one's
No.
footnoted for workforce housing, or do you want to just do 5?
I like the idea of saying if you're gonna do 5, you're doing it for workforce housing. Because now you're ensuring that, I say you're ensuring that it becomes at least, there's an affordable unit there, but
So leave it at 5.
what's affordable?
And put a footnote next to it for workforce housing, and
It
just
already
leave
is
it
a
that way.
footnote.
Huh?
It already is a
Oh, a footnote on a footnote.
Well, Jimmy said, or unless approved, workforce housing, or something like that.
Right.
I would
Just
say,
put an
yeah,
or, just put an or, like Jamie said.
one structure that contains no more than 4
We're not gonna do
dwelling
workforce
units, with
housing.
the exception of approved
Yeah.
workforce
It'll all be
housing.
for-
You're not gonna
as
do
a
workforce
footnote.
housing if you get $300.
So that's when the lawyer said that she couldn't justify that if it goes to court.
Why wouldn't she be able
But
to
it's
justify?
Because it's
Right,
going against
'cause it-
state law.
Only if you deny a workforce housing thing with 5 units.
We're not denying workforce housing.
That's why I don't understand lawyers calling on that one.
Yeah.
Right.
But can I clarify that, because I thought this was one that I brought, so footnote 6 still stays,
Yes,
8 units per building.
in the town center.
Okay.
In the town center.
I just thought this was one that I brought up, and it's not what I brought up, so that's why I
No,
was.
it's gonna change.
We just want, yeah. So it brings back to a question we had, what's the difference between neighborhood residential and
General
general residential?
residential.
When you look at the regulations, there was
Right,
no
I was
difference.
trying to address a problem with optics and what people like to look at, as opposed to development or any other word.
Yeah.
And the optics of what people don't like to look at is like an 8-unit apartment building. So that's why I wanted to change footnote 6 to 4 dwelling units per building, because it changes it to a different
You
look.
want it on every district?
There
Every-
could be more than one building.
Or just
Yeah, I
the
mean, like,
residential districts?
It would, well, Bennett, the one behind Urban's not a good example, because it's.
Here. They get a CO yet?
Right. Not yet.
Because they haven't even priced those yet, so.
Yeah, it's
Coming
like
soon.
286 or
Yeah,
something
coming
like
soon,
that.
I keep going, actually, they're supposed to send me an email when the price
He's
is
having
set.
water issues, is my understanding, for some of the buildings out back. He might have to cut down that development.
They were having water issues before, that was the big holdup going in there, is
It
that
was gonna be 80, now it's 76 units, because the DES said you couldn't do.
Where
more.
Dove says they can't, pumping water like
Okay, so
crazy.
wait, let's get back to this.
Thank you.
I mean, if, I'm honestly,
has a
I don't
bad
mind
habit?
the idea of,
You can go on it.
is Jamie saying, I don't mind the idea of having smaller building unit if it, from an optics standpoint, in the town center area, if we wanted to change that, but I do think we should say it's 4 units unless it's approved as a workforce housing. So it gets its deed restriction, it gets all that, and then it can be 5 units.
I think that was like,
That village was also 4
What?
units too,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's 3 districts, 4 units, or 5. There was some, we discussed that, whether it should be village, would be bigger, that's good. So anything bigger than town center or regional commercial.
you guys are losing me. We're gonna go. So are we, it sounds like,
What's the consensus here? Do you want to just do 5? Or do you
I
want to
like-
do
I
4
like-
with a footnote?
I like 4 with a foot,
4 with a footnote.
4 with a footnote.
not with a footnote, or.
Or,
Right.
No,
if she can't.
or 5. You don't have to run this by her again, do you?
Yes, I do.
Look, attorneys fit into 2 categories, chickens and hawks.
Okay.
Tell her to be a hawk.
Well, just confirm what she said. She said if you workforce housing, we're allowed.
Yeah.
We're allowed to workforce housing. So-
That was your argument,
It doesn't
workforce
conflict.
housing
It doesn't
regulations.
Yeah, we don't deny.
So we're gonna
workforce
allow
housing.
workforce housing.
Yeah.
So put an asterisk next to it.
Okay,
That's
wait,
a
wait, wait.
make-a-buster.
I'll be back.
Okay,
Okay, so make sure I just have what you guys want. Only one structure that contains no more than 4 dwelling units.
unless it's for workforce housing.
Approved workforce housing.
Approved workforce housing.
Approved
Or 5.
Yeah.
workforce.
Throw a firecracker
Walking.
in as he's running out of the room.
Okay, hold on.
Five would be
Focus,
allowed.
okay. Unless it's approved workforce housing,
Done.
5
Five with, 5 would be allowed.
dwelling
Yep,
units.
yep. Does that sound good? The other wordsmith here. Polish that up.
Sure.
Yep.
And so
You
the
can
eight-
polish it. Mythbusters proved it.
Right, and I'll just, the eight
So-
looks like it's regulated down to just senior housing.
Been selling all
That's
those
fine, I
moose
guess.
droppings
The only footnote
polished
for
to
6
the
is under
gift shop,
senior
so,
housing.
you know. All right.
Come again?
Well, it looks like 6 has been removed from everything except for senior housing, so that would be the only option for 8 units in a building, would be senior housing, because it looks like footnote 6 got taken out of everything except for senior
Town
housing.
center.
6. That's the only 6s I see. Oh,
Town center.
town center could have 8. For that footnote 6.
Okay?
I think,
I
it's
think
not up to me. It's up to the
Well, it's
board.
up to the
Don't
board,
push it
yes.
at me. This is not my
Because Dove
decision.
must have got.
Okay, so are we saying
If you can,
CP,
they must have got some ZBA.
are we saying
They did get
GR,
ZBA relief.
Dove's ZBA relief has expired?
No, yeah, right.
Anyhow,
Oh,
um,
yeah,
not
we
for
extended,
Z-
it's
not
not the
Z-
ZBA part.
Oh, debatable. Depends
Yeah.
on which side
September
you're
and
on.
October.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyhow, so are we saying keeping it as is?
Yep.
And just changing the footnote?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that,
Everybody agree?
that what we're, okay.
It
Make
just
sure I'm-
says
I'm
we
not
comply
missing
with
anything.
In other
What are we
words,
talking
compliance
Zoning.
with the
Table of uses.
workforce housing
Okay,
regulations.
just changing the footnote
Yep.
wording.
Footnote.
Got it. Thank you.
Still on the same thing?
Yes.
Oh my
What-
God.
Sorry.
What number is that in our zoning, the table of uses?
Page
Yeah,
97.
thank you. It was
So
like, I'm flipping and I'm like, it's gonna take me forever.
we
to get
can,
there.
so the zoning Article 4 is just definition, 5 is definition, we've already talked about
Yeah.
those.
Rest of this should be. able to breeze through.
Article number 6, there was a little bit of discussion if we're gonna have that in our zoning, we should have a special exception.
Is
If
this
we-
the,
If you
I
don't
want
want
to
to
delete
entertain
it. I
it, you
brought
want
it
to,
up. I want to delete the whole thing.
is everybody okay with deleting that from
Charitable
Where are we?
gambling?
charitable
We
gambling?
wanted to have conditional
Oh.
use permit,
Yes.
Yeah.
but they said, no, the zoning board would have
Then
to
he's
do
like,
it.
can we just
If
not
we-
have it? If you don't
Send
have
it
it,
to
it's not
ZBA.
You
allowed.
have it listed, it can't be
All
allowed.
right, striking it.
Number 6 is being struck.
Number
Casinos,
7 is
casinos.
just the definition again. Number 8, I
Recreational
hope you got a
vehicles,
different sheet for that, because it was
Yep,
updated
I got
in
the
the,
second sheet,
after
yep.
printing that, okay.
Page 8. Okay,
Um,
whatever.
I don't know if you have any comments about that,
Does anybody read
Jamie?
my new recreational vehicle
I like it.
regulation? Does any,
I like
It's
it.
a new number 8.
I like it.
Did the attorney approve that?
pardon me?
The attorney approved
She
it?
rewrote it for me because I
Yes.
Oh,
put it
okay.
together
The
really
rewritten-
quickly.
the
and it was
rewritten
kind of
version
Version is what you gave
have.
us, right, okay.
Is a new, this page right here, right?
Yeah, 8 new one.
Yes.
That one? Yep, okay.
Yeah, it's labeled 3.3.1 parents 2 would be under
Yeah.
allowed uses.
It's the number 8 separate page.
Okay, 9, I have some comments,
Hey,
okay?
just remember,
Then-
living in a van down by a river is chic now.
And I'm sympathetic to, a low cost, affordable housing for some people, but it's just, I think it's out of control. And it gives us a little bit more
There's
team.
septic issues here, right?
Yes.
I mean,
There's a-
That's
so
the
there's
other
that
thing.
are
too.
they putting it in buckets and dumping it in the lake?
Who was that?
I don't know if anybody's read it, if they have any
That
issues,
was
questions,
hilarious.
comments,
Yeah.
support,
Motivational
agree.
That was hilarious.
That one you gotta vote on to move forward, right?
We will on the 7th.
Okay.
If you guys are okay with this, because we kind of brought it up before. New language.
Yeah, this
Nobody
was-
has issue with this new language.
I am issuing.
Him living in a van down by the river?
I'll move my van every
It's
month.
expensive.
Yeah,
Down by the
move it.
river, man.
It is, you don't attach structures.
He's like those salmon pens out there where they drop all the crap. in
So number
there.
9.
That's the next thing. Number 9, I got changes.
Okay.
Okay, we have currently, we had 80,000 square feet with 60 uplands and 35 contiguous uplands. We're increasing everything by 62.5%, up to 130,000 square feet. My question is, should we also change those other things to more reflect that increase? In other words, instead of 60,000 in uplands, you should be around 90,000. Instead of 35 contiguous, you should be around 50.
So when I originally looked at this, I was I was thinking about that aspect of it.
Okay,
And the concern that I had is the build area, I'm not asking for more build area. I'm
Right.
asking for them to make
Right,
sure that they
okay.
have bigger lots.
yeah, I can go either way. I was just curious what the board wanted to say on this.
There might be more things that we would, from a staff point of view, that we would have to look through to make sure that those get changed properly as part of the zoning.
And I would like to ask that you reconsider the setback changes.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
That's part of the
Just
implications
because,
page.
I mean, a bigger lot's gonna do the effect that you want, but the setback is gonna, you already have enough ZBA cases for setback relief as it is, 10 this past year. So,
Because they're on little lots.
no, I got 2 acres, 2.5 acre lots. A builder comes in and he's got a wetland on this side and he hugs it to a setback. They wanna build an addition, you know, and so I could look through them but one, it causes, I think, a burden on the ZBA, and the whole idea of zoning amendments is to try to look at what's gone through zoning and then change your regulations so they don't go to zoning ZBA. But beyond that is lots before the planning board would have new setbacks as you prescribe.
Yep.
Other lots created would have the existing setbacks, so I'd have to research a lot when they come in for a building permit. When was your lot created to find out what their setbacks were?
Have to do that anyway, though.
No, because they've been 30, 40, 40 since the beginning of time. So every lot has the same ones. If they weren't approved by the planning board, they would have new.
How about the ones on state planning board approval in 70? All they were concerned with is,
State planning board approval doesn't give them the vested.
no, it's only for water, but when I built finally in 1996, I had to adhere to the 30.
New ones, right, correct. Right, so if it wasn't approved by the planning board, before the planning board existed and the town adopted a planning
Yep.
board, they go by whatever regulations are in effect today.
Okay. That's what
But
happened.
everything in between, just like the wetland buffer one that got taken out a couple years ago, you know, the way it's been done is that, you know, if before zoning you have the new wetland buffers, in between, even though it was taken out, you're still beholden to when your lot was created, what the buffers were.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd have another separate ones for new regulations. You know, so it just becomes, if there's already an issue with setbacks, not an issue, but if there's, ask for relief for setbacks, and you're, to make the setbacks more and then create just more of an administrative problem. I just, that's my comment.
I think my only concern is if people are already seeking relief from the setbacks by allowing them to build closer to a setback by having those regulations consistent where they are, you're going to force them into a situation where they're going to come in seeking more relief. You're actually not doing anything to ease that burden. Because they're going to, all the existing lots, everything that's currently around, they're going to still be coming in to seek relief from, which is what most of them, I'm assuming at this point, are coming in for. It's not new lots, it's existing lots that they're seeking
Right,
relief
that's
from.
what I'm saying. So if you build on the new 3-acre lot with a 50-foot setback, you build a house on it, and then a month, 3 years later, you want to add a deck, and you got to come in for relief, you've still built close to your setback line. It doesn't, I don't know what it solves.
But you got 250-foot frontage.
Mhm.
Presume you're gonna have 250 feet all the way back to absorb the 130,000 square feet. Put a house.
300 and,
Yeah, you put a house in the
350.
middle there, you could
Right.
put a pretty big deck on either side.
right,
get
and
that
not
big.
impact your setbacks.
But what I'm saying is people don't. I mean, you
Right.
can look at the map, and new houses, old houses, houses in between houses, they hug them to one side. There's a rock, there's a ledge outcropping, there's a wetland, there's a nice tree I want to save. This is my property, and I want a big lawn. I don't care if I back up against my neighbor, too bad for him. I'm gonna have my big lawn. So that's what I'm saying, house situation. I'm just saying that
But that's,
the 40-foot, the 50-foot thing,
I'm protecting that guy that's already there, not the new guy coming in that
But
says I'm
he's
going to build
but he's
this.
got 40-foot, he's got the same setbacks. Why would, okay, your neighbor's got different setbacks when you've only got 40 foot. The
So now
guy
you
is
got
right there.
90 feet between you and the neighbor.
I just,
If we want 100 feet in a conservation subdivision, why is 90 so, or 100 really so unreasonable between two homes?
That would just be on the new 3 acre lot stuff.
Yep.
But I don't know,
Anybody else?
it's,
Comment on this?
I realize it makes more work for you, but I'll be candid. I don't really care about that.
no, I know. But you were the 3 acre thing, and then it came out that, okay, we gotta increase
Overtime.
if we increase one thing, we gotta create, just like John brought up a proportional increase of everything, and Ron with his, dimensional fractions of a lot size thing, you don't have to adhere to those. So the 50-foot thing I'm just pointing out, it seemed arbitrary. You wanted the 3 acres, and I support that.
It's not, because if we're talking about doing 100 feet between cluster groupings and things like that, and we're talking about having buffers between our neighbors, that aligns with everything else that we're doing at 50 feet between setbacks. It perfectly aligns with what we're talking about, which was why I only increased it from 30 to 50 in those areas. I didn't ask for anything more. I'd love to go 100, but I didn't think that was reasonable. And I didn't think increasing the 60,000 square feet for the building area was reasonable either on it, because if I'm already requiring a larger lot, why do I need to make them have a bigger space to build?
Yeah, I wasn't
Gives it
wedded
more-
to that, I just wanted to get the.
It gives them more of an opportunity to make that setback.
Right, it truly allows them a bit more flexibility with their lot and how they build on the lot. That's the whole point of doing it that way, is to
Yeah.
give them the more flexibility by
They're
only
increasing
requiring
it-
the
they're
60,000.
Increasing it by
as with the smaller
62%.
setbacks. It would give you more flexibility.
I mean,
Just saying.
Right.
but they're not, but here's the thing, they're not going to, and then they're gonna be coming in for relief, if that's the case. They're gonna do that anyway.
But you can say 100-foot setbacks on a 10 acre lot. If you build on your property line, you're gonna come in for relief regardless.
That's what I'm
just
saying, they're gonna,
It just seems arbitrary, and then it makes my job harder. That's my whole point.
Well, why don't we keep it for a year? Let's come back to this if he's inundated with new projects that could cause.
like I
That's
said,
it. If
I'm
it-
not
if
worried
it
about
continues to
making.
become
a-
an issue, then you should change your regulations.
Right, setback.
Yes, we both
50 feet are
do.
not
But
a
he's
problem.
already saying it's an
Setback.
issue, he's got 10 cases where they're coming in for
Right,
relief.
but like historically, the planning board looked at ZBA cases and said, what's going to the ZBA? Obviously, we gotta change our zoning, so they don't go to the ZBA. We're going the opposite way, saying,
But
let's
there-
make it more restrictive.
but here's
I mean,
the-
it's just planning. I mean, I'm just telling you what normal planning is what's like, and not the opposite.
But the ZBA is only supposed to be approving relief for a hardship. Hey, I want a bigger deck is not a hardship.
Of course it is. It's reasonable use. If you have a 2.83 acre lot, and you have a wetland on one side, you have a septic here, and the only place you can go is in this direction, that's not a hardship to have a deck?
Sure it is.
Of course it is. It's a reasonable use of your property. And for you to want somebody, not yourself, but everybody else to have 3 acres and have flexibility, on a 2.83 acre, this one's coming on the ZBA, that's the only thing I talk about, in a general sense, is like to have the flexibility, that's the flexibility, not restricting it and calling it flexibility.
We don't agree.
Okay, I know, but that's my song and dance.
So.
Send to
Chairman,
the
do you
board,
guys
what do you
wanna-
want? Keep it or don't keep it?
What are you keeping? I like the lesser setbacks myself.
Okay.
Let's-
One for
Since the
record.
question or the concern seems to be more about the setbacks,
Yeah,
is
it's
what I'm
about
hearing.
setbacks. Keeping the
Can we
original
see if we want to keep the original
or proposed.
or the proposed?
Yeah, that's the question.
So that's the question.
Bob's pro current.
Well, let's start with Scott and go around so that we have it.
Don't know. Again, don't have enough
You
experience.
must have an opinion. Come on.
Don't have enough experience.
Yeah, it's just an opinion at this point.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I
Well, you know,
proposed it,
purpose,
so.
yeah.
You proposed it, or we're even. How about this guy?
You're what? Where are you?
Sitting
No,
next to you.
I think you're. I think it's deadlocked. By, let's say vote. With you. With Andy, because if I go with Bob, it's 2 and 2. If I have to go the other way, I'm the deciding vote, I'm the swing vote. power.
Well, I might be swayed.
Exercise
Let's not be here all night.
please.
I might be being swayed actually by what Jamie said, that he's seen cases here that already are gonna be a problem.
Where he said, change it back in a year. Okay.
I said
Where
that
do I
was an
come down?
option.
Where do I come down?
But what if he has 50 cases before the year's up? I don't know.
I say keep it.
It's more than me than him.
Well, it's only gonna take effect in
I think
March.
we're already making significant,
Mainly for
increase in the
logistical
lot
reasons. I think
size.
it gets complicated.
keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Okay, so I have, all right, so.
Keep it as
No
it
vote?
is.
3-1.
Yes.
Keep it as it is?
Keep as is, keep as is.
Current, yes, I vote current.
Yeah, I vote current.
Okay.
Sorry, Andy.
That, hey, I mean,
So, that
I'm
being
a
said,
little
are you
concerned
okay
about
with
current, But
how it's moving forward without?
I like the big.
I mean, if we're keeping the minimum lot frontage, we're keeping
The
the
minimum
minimum
lot
lot
size and the
size.
minimum lot frontage, just keeping the
I
original
mean,
setbacks.
if the compromise to get the board to agree with moving it forward that way is to say I'll compromise on the setbacks, okay, I mean, I'm not a complete,
Hard ass.
No.
you didn't say that word.
Yeah.
So you're saying keep lot size and frontage. Yep. And just get rid of setback.
Yep.
And keep the setbacks original.
you know, and leave setbacks as originally
Yeah. And
established.
we'll review it in a year and see what's up, that's all.
Got it.
Any,
Okay, and the last one, we've already talked about, so.
yeah, we did.
That one's fine.
Complaints, Jamie.
11, Article 11, we already talked about, and everybody was fine with that as well.
All right, that's it.
So I think that's it. I don't have anything for new business. Anybody else have
Can
any
we
other
speak
business?
of petition ones? Just so
Oh, yeah.
the board has to make make their recommendation to support or
That
not
has to
support
be
it.
at a public hearing.
This isn't a public hearing?
No.
Did we
Not
get
a
it?
public
Did we,
hearing for the
Word
per-
sorry,
for-
did we get petitioned articles submitted?
So let's back up. The town received 4 petition warrant articles. It has to be advertised before we talk about them.
Why?
That's
Mr.
the
Jeffries was here, I
procedure.
figured you must have.
Well, he left.
They're all his, right? You're not gonna say?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can hear in a virtual sense.
Yeah, so once they're advertised, I can give them to you.
Okay.
Really?
Oh,
We can't
we
discuss them
can't
before
even
you
look at
advertise
them.
them?
Because we can't change them, so.
No.
I'm okay not talking about them
Petition?
now.
I'm with
I
Ron.
think Bob is.
I'm saying, I don't,
Thank you for Bob.
you guys haven't seen them, and it's a gray area if I'm talking about them because
They're under lock and key in her
they're
desk.
not, well, no, because it's not,
Because they have not been presented by the petitioner.
yes.
Right.
I'm confused. Whatever.
We've been here long enough.
He got tired?
Well, no, I mean, if you present them the day they become law,
Yeah, I
the
know.
day
I've
you
been
vote
looking
them,
at
they
mine.
become law, and they haven't, right?
Before we leave,
So
Jamie, do you
that's,
have anything?
well, we
before
do have an out, wait,
Oh,
sorry.
okay, we do
So
have
for the proposed zoning amendments, these, as well as the petitioned ones, once they're posted in the paper, we have to treat them as that they're active.
Right.
So
So anybody
that's
that
a problem,
submits
it's a
an
problem
application,
for,
right?
yeah.
you
You're
can't
essentially on
building
hold.
code-
Same with
building-
him. He's on hold essentially until it gets voted on or not.
Mhm.
It'll be in the paper the 23rd. That's the
March.
latest that we can advertise.
But that has to be 10 days before the next
You
meeting.
can't count the day of the meeting and you can't count the day of the
Advertise.
Meeting.
posting or advertisement, wherever. And then the 10 days. So really it's 12 days.
Hmm.
And due to the holiday, the paper's not printing on certain days or all that stuff. So that's why it's the 23rd. Even if they,
The next meeting?
the 7th.
7th.
So that's the public hearing. Yeah, so,
So the public hearing, the proposed, the petitioned will be presented
Yes.
the 7th?
yes.
Okay.
I'm like,
Time to leave.
yeah, okay, they're ready to go.
8:30, come on.
I would just like to say thank you for the snacks.
Time to leave.
I am
Oh,
definitely a
good to
little
go.
fatter. Thank you for the card.
We'll vote on it.
I appreciate all the work that you do and Jamie as the zoning administrator does, even though we don't always agree.
And
So it's
as well as the board, because we have a lot of healthy discussion.
From myself, not from,
You're the
I'm
best.
just saying.
Happy
Okay.
birthday, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Birthday.
stickers, by the way.
Birthday.
Thank you.
Should we sing?
No, please no. You are still online, so.
That's okay.
No, thank you.
Be part of the public
It's already
record.
2 weeks.
It's
Wow.
the 8th, right?
Yes, December 8th.
Right. We had talked about it.
Like-
That was weeks ago.
I know, right? So that's why it's like, I don't need to say happy birthday. I'm like, thank you. It's my neighbor's birthday today, but, anyhow,
Anything
other than
else?
that, no.
Okay. Anybody
Motion to
else?
adjourn?
Wait, who's motioning? Let me write that down.
Second,
Andy and Bob.
There you go. Roll call.
Shepherd, aye.
Yeah, bye.
Tessie, your eye.
Allard, definitely aye.
Driscoll, aye. Good night, folks.